Untitled Chapter.
Hey there! Welcome to episode 29 of an ongoing series where we basically take the camera anywhere we want. We try to find secrets and new discoveries to some of our favorite games. With that said, let's get going. Things are going to be a little bit different this week. I'm basically going to do the legacy of Mario Kart because a lot of people are asking for the highlights of my live stream, and I thought I could do one better. And what better way to start this episode than with Mario Kart 64? So first, let's take a look at Monty Mole. And if you notice, they poke their head out of the hole before jumping. But if we take the camera below the hole, you can actually see that the entire body is textured before he jumps out. But you'd never be able to see that because they never stand outside the holes. And you know what's really funny is that the whole Mario Kart series seems to have Monty Moles. So take a guess at what that means. That's right, it means many more Monty Moles. You can see in Mario Kart Wii that the Monty Moles are digging through the ground, but you can't actually see them until they're ready to spring up. But when they are ready to spring up, that's when the magic begins. And you actually get to see them in a paused position before they actually spring out. And I don't know, they kind of look like plush dolls or something. Anyways, don't worry, it's not going to be all Monty Moles. Just think, viewer, at this point, you'll never have to see them ever again, until I do a Mario Kart 8 episode. But what's interesting here is that this particular Monty Mole has leg textures on the bottom, but then in a different level in the same game, which is Mario Kart DS, the Rocky Wrench takes a completely different approach. It's mirrored on the top and bottom, so it's got a Siamese twin going on. That's an unfortunate life. So during my live stream, a viewer actually mentioned some item boxes that are below the battle stage in Mario Kart 64. Now at this point, I'm starting to realize that I should probably give credit to the cutting room floor for this. Thank you guys. But you know what? Let's upstage the cuttingroomfloor.com. How about we find our own hidden boxes underneath the stage? In the very first track of Mario Kart 64, check this out. Item boxes to the left and underneath the stage. Yup. Okay, I guess this is actually just the tunnel that you go through. That's right next to the finish line. Alright, you win this time, cutting room floor. Alright, so we're finally back to looking at Mario Kart Double Dash again. Reunited, and it feels so good. So what did I miss in the last episode? Well, Rainbow Road for one thing. And what's so particularly interesting about Rainbow Road? Well, the stage itself has a lot of items like Koopa shells, bombs, stars, mushrooms, littered all throughout the track to make it look a little bit special. But they left out one thing. And what they did was, they decided to put it on the outside of the skybox of the game. This is incredibly unusual, but if you take the camera through the skybox, you can actually see a heart that was clearly meant to be on the track at one point as well. Now, unfortunately, the Super Nintendo original will not be able to be featured in this episode, but we can pay homage to it by doing one of its stages. On Mario Circuit 1 on Mario Kart DS, if you take the camera below the level's terrain, you can actually see that the trees in the background are way longer and way taller than the player was ever allowed to actually see them. One of the biggest requests for Mario Kart Wii was the Coconut Mall. And I don't really blame them, there's a lot to look at. But what really strikes out to me is the parking lot area of Coconut Mall. Because your vision is usually so skewed when you're in this area that you don't even realize the scope of this thing. And if you zoom the camera out, you can actually see that both sides have really large parking lots, but then it goes even further than that. There's a long road that's at the end of the stage, and then it's met with an ocean. And that ocean goes on for a really long time. It's pretty incredible how humongous this area is. Birds! Always love to cover birds on Boundary Break, and what an ancient bird this one is. These are the seagulls for Koopa Beach on Mario Kart 64. And because they move around so much, I have to pause the game, and when we do, we can actually see that these birds in particular have very beautiful eyes. Unusually beautiful eyes. And then when we move to the front, they don't look so great no more. I think these guys are made up of a total of maybe 5 polygons. So in Bowser's Castle in Mario Kart Double Dash, there is a fire-spewing Bowser statue. And there's actually two pretty interesting things about it. One is that inside the mouth, there's actually half of a texture that's supposed to represent the hole where the fireballs come from. But since the fireballs and the teeth and everything else is covering up that texture, it looks like they didn't really bother to fix it. But what's even more interesting than that is that if we take the camera below the statue, you can see that there's actually a pillar that holds it up. It's as if the developers wanted to believe it themselves. So by far the best zoom out in any Mario Kart track that I've ever done by far is Waluigi's Pinball. Because when you zoom it out, you see Well, a pinball machine, which does make perfect sense. It's just that it never really felt like it as you're playing through the track. In fact, with this new perspective, I've come to the realization that the developers wanted you to feel like a pinball as you rocket out into the machine at the start of the track and then work your way down into the gutter beyond the bumpers. What's also funny is that the roulette wheel is a full circle, and oddly enough, it has textures behind the wheel as well. So here's some rare official canon for the Super Mario universe. If you look at the roots of King Boo's teeth, you can actually see that they're blue, which is really interesting. So I decided to check it out in the Wii version as well. And once again, the roots are blue. Consistency. I like that. So I was checking out Cheep Cheep Beach in Mario Kart DS, and one of the oddest things about it is that obviously it has a ton of water. It's a beach. But once you get to the wooded area of Cheep Cheep Beach, you really can't see what's beyond the brush. And if you do look beyond the brush, thanks to Magic Camera, you can actually see that the water's purple for some reason. They actually added a purple filter to the water, but I checked thoroughly, and there's no way you could have possibly seen this. Back at Koopa Beach on Mario Kart 64, we're actually going to do a new perspective of the Koopa Rock. Lots of people, including myself for many years, didn't even realize that this was in the shape of a Koopa, but if you weren't convinced back then, it becomes very apparent now when you spin the camera around it. I know, I should feel absolutely ashamed. I'm just going to chalk it up to the fact that I was focused on the race, and most of the time I was playing Mario Kart 64, it was on 1/4 of a television screen. Standard definition. In Peach's Garden in Mario Kart DS, we actually get to see what I assume is the back end of Princess Peach's castle. And is there anything worthwhile to see? What's actually incredibly funny is the door that leads into the castle, it doesn't end there. If you go below the ground, you can see that the door continues downward, and if you take the camera above the ceiling, you can see that the door continues there as well. A very popular viewer request after the Double Dash episode was for DK Mountain, and I just thought there wasn't anything particularly interesting to see, but apparently you guys love zoom outs of the track, so who am I to take that away from you? So what's particularly interesting about DK Mountain is that it's actually so massive that you have to go to 2 different portions of it in order to see the entire map. Because once you're on top of DK Mountain, plant growth at the bottom minimalizes, and if you're at the bottom of the mountain itself doesn't pop in. And we couldn't leave out Mario Kart Wii, so what was a very popular choice for that game? Daisy Circuit. And I totally understand why. A track on a beautiful sunset? That makes perfect sense to me. When you zoom it out, you can actually see giant circles in front of, I guess Daisy has a mansion instead of a castle. And if we take the camera behind Daisy's mansion, you can see that it actually has no rendering in the back. But with that said, it's very surprising that the entire rooftop's rendered. So of all the Princess Peach's castles that I've seen on Boundary Break, and trust me, I've seen a lot, the one on Mario Kart DS is easily the most elaborate on the inside of the castle. Because when you take the camera inside the castle, you can see the developers made a whole bunch of shapes and just kind of shoved them into the cube base. Like for example here, you can actually see that the entrance doors are also at this very end corner piece that's connected to the original part that also had the door on it. And then these spires at the end pieces drive way deep into the castle. So the last Nintendo 64 clip that we're going to be looking at, I know, is going to be in Yoshi's Valley. And of course, if you're a smart cookie, you obviously know that in the distance, Yoshi's egg turns into a 2D texture to save on memory. But I took this as an opportunity to look at it up close. And then obviously when you get closer to Yoshi's egg, it becomes full 3D modeled again. The last Double Dash clip that we're going to look at is a viewer request to see a better look at Luigi's Mansion. Now I think I got this request an awful lot because I think we can all agree that it's a cool bit. And the story behind it, of course, is that this is actually the good mansion that you get if you got the best ending in Luigi's Mansion. And I just wanted to see if there was anything in the back, and unfortunately no. Like in many Nintendo games, the developers chose to do this to save on memory. And as we say goodbye to the Mario Kart DS version, we get a nice zoom out view of the airship level. And one last goodbye via Mario Kart Wii, the Rainbow Road stage. Thank you very much for watching. This week I'm going to actually be doing a Real Talk episode, which I haven't done in a long time. Because there's so many subscribers that suddenly showed up on my channel. We're famous, Pat! Woo! So I'm going to be talking about that, but more importantly, if you want to see more footage of today's episode and the episode that kind of blew up, which was the Resident Evil 4 episode, stay tuned for the next Real Talk episode and you'll see footage of it while I explain what's going on here with this whole channel business. Also, in the Real Talk, I'll explain why we didn't go with the Pokemon Stadium episode, unfortunately. Sorry, Pokemon fans. I will get to you very, very soon. If you want, you can check out my playlist if you're a first-time person here. I gotta work on my English. And you can blah, blah, blah. Check it out.
That thing there's probably a window that's going to show up right next to Derek. Yeah, in that space.
Alright, guys. I'll see you later. Bye.
Doodles!